Hello, welcome to taxation class, and this is the third module, and we'll be looking at the sources and legal framework of taxation. The sources and legal framework of taxation, and we will look at the sources of tax law. We will look at the legal rights and obligations of taxpayer. Also, we look at interpretation of tax law and judicial precedents, the enforcement and penalties under Nigerian tax law, and reform and modernization in Nigerian tax legislation. The effectiveness of any tax system rests fundamentally on the strength of its legal framework and clarity of its sources of tax law. And in Nigeria, taxation operates within a structured legal environment that defines the rights, obligation, and responsibilities of both the government and taxpayers, and the law are derived from multiple sources, including the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, and the various acts of the National Assembly, the military decrees, the subsidiary legislations, the judicial decisions, and administrative circulars issued by tax authorities, and together these instruments provide the legal basis for the imposition, collection, and administration of taxes. When we look at the source of tax law in Nigeria, the first we'll be looking at is the Constitution. And when we talk about the Constitution, it is the supreme law. It is the supreme law, the highest, and it's divides taxing power between the federal, state, and local government, just like we've said, exclusive and concurrent legislative lists, and it establishes the federation accounts for revenue sharing. We also have the statutes, and when we talk about this, it's the act of the National Assembly and state laws. And for the federal level, we have the Company Income Tax Act, we have the Value Added Tax Act, and the likes. And for the state, we have the Personal Income Tax Act and various states laws that are available. And the judicial precedence also is another tax law, judicial precedence, and this deals with the case law. And when we talk about this, it's the ruling from the tax appeal tribunals, the Federal High Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. And it interprets statutes and sets binding precedents. An example is the Shell versus the FBI. And another tax law is the subsidiary legislation. And when we talk about this, these are circulars and guidelines from the FIRS and the SIRS and the Joint Tax Board. And it provides operational clarity on tax laws like VAT exemption circulars. We also have, in understanding this, we have the core principle. The core principle. And if we will summarize it, it's actually no taxation without law. So if there is no law, there is no taxation. And this is why this talking about the tax law is very, very important. And when we talk about the legal maxim, the government cannot impose a tax without clear statutory authority. And the implication of this is that tax liabilities must be explicitly stated in law, not assumed or inferred. And when we look at the role of interpretation in this, court use strict rules to interpret tax statutes, and this rule include the literal rule, that is, words are given their plain ordinary meaning. And we also have the golden rule that this is it avoids an absurd outcome from a literal interpretation. And we also have the mischief rule, and for this it interprets law to address the mischief it was meant to correct. An example of this is in the Federal Board of Internal Revenue. versus the Halibutin. The court held that tax cannot be imposed by analogy. We have the legal right of taxpayers, and when we talk about this, the law protects citizens from arbitrary taxation, and key rights includes the right to information and clarity, which grants access to clear information on tax obligations. We also have the right to fair assessment, and this deals with the accurate and non-arbitrary, that is, must be assessed accurately and non-arbitrarily. And another is the right to appeal, that is, taxpayer have the right to challenge assessments at the tax appeal tribunal and higher courts. Also, another right is the right to privacy, which deals with confidentiality of financial information. We also have the right to be heard, that is, to present your case before enforcement action. Another is the right to a refund, that is, you have to pay, you have the right to receive a claim back for overpaid taxes. And the last is the right to certainty. And for this protection, it's actually a protection from retroactive tax law. We have the legal obligations of the taxpayer. And when we talk about this, with right comes responsibilities. Yes, with right comes responsibilities. And the key obligations include registration. The taxpayer must obtain a tax identification number. And that is why you see that the Nigerian government is presently on this matter to ensure registration to obtain this thing. And also another obligation is record keeping, that is maintaining accurate financial records and books. Another is filing returns, and this deals with submission of annual returns by stipulated deadline. And another is the payment of tax, which talks about pay assessed taxes promptly. Another application is the accurate disclosure, the provision of complete and truthful information. Also, a taxpayer has the responsibility to cooperate with the tax authority, that is complying with audit and requests from tax authority. And the last is obligation for deduction and remittances, that is they act as a withholding agent for payments to others. What are the enforcement and penalties if a taxpayer refuses to comply? Tax authority have power to enforce compliance, and this enforcement mechanism includes tax audit and investigation. Another is the issuance of demand notice. Another is the seizure of assets and garnishing proceedings, that is freezing of bank accounts. And lastly, the prosecution in courts. And we also have common penalties like for late filing, like fines of about 25,000 initial plus 5,000 a month under SITA. We also have a late payment penalty, which is interest charged on unpaid amounts. We also have tax evasion, which is fine and potential imprisonment because it's a criminal offense. And another is false declaration, and this is it has penalties and it can lead to prosecution. And when we talk about dispute resolution, we have the tax appeal tribunal, and the purpose of them being established is to serve as a specialized, faster forum to resolving disputes between taxpayers and tax authority. And jurisdiction is that they hear appeal on disputes concerning federal taxes, and the importance of this tribunal is to provide a fair, accessible, and less technical avenue for redress before proceeding to regular courts. And the process is part of the legal right to appeal, promoting fairness and trust in the system. We also have the legislative modernized reform, and when we talk about this, we talk about the Finance Act, um, the reforms that comes as in terms of the legislation. There are ongoing reforms aiming to create a clearer, fairer, and more efficient system. And notable legislative reform in Nigeria include the Finance Act. Um, we also have the National Tax Policy. For the Finance Act, there's an annual amendment to update major taxes, tax law, as we discussed. Example of this is VAT rate increase from 5% to 7.5% based on the Finance Act 2020. And for the National Tax Policy 2017, it's a blueprint of to harmonize tax across all government years and eliminate duplication. We also have the administrative and technological modernization reform. And for this, we have under the digitalization of tax administration, we have the reform like the FIRS Tax Pro Max, we have the e-filing and e-payment that is online. And this reduces physical interaction, improves speed, and minimizes corruption. And as per the data analysis, it actually enables risk-based audits to target non-compliance taxes. Another reform is the institutional and administrative reform. And Nigeria has strengthened its institutional capacity to ensure more efficient and professional tax administrations in terms of professional training for tax officials, harmonization of tax practices, and improved coordination between FIRS, the states, and the JTB. We also have, for the last aspect, the tax incentive and compliance promotion reform. And for this, we talk about reforms like tax tax relief for small and medium scale enterprises in form of exemption or reduction in tax rates. And also, we have a voluntary disclosure program. It gives with taxpayers are encouraged to regularize past non-compliance in exchange for reduced penalty or interest waiver. And lastly, is a sector-specific incentive, and this deals with certain sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, and renewable energy enjoy tax holiday, investment and allowance and deductions designed to stimulate economic growth and attract investment. In conclusion, we've been able to look at the Nigerian tax law as one which is firmly rooted in a hierarchy of laws with the Constitution at the apex. We've looked at the principle of no taxation without law is fundamental, requiring strict statutory interpretation. We also look at a critical balance exists between the power of the states to collect revenue and the legal right of the taxpayers to fair treatment. And enforcement mechanism and penalties are necessary to deter non-compliance and protect revenue. And we also see the ongoing reforms in terms of the legislative, technological, and administrative reforms that are ongoing in Nigeria and which are crucial for modernizing the system involving efficiency and aligning with international standard. Thanks for listening.